let's look at some business continuity and disaster recovery planning and what are the differences and how these things sort of work in our environment today. So there's two related processes anytime we talk about business continuity and disaster recovery, and they kind of differ a little bit from each other, but they're kind of interlinked as well. So let's just sort of go through this and sort of define each of these. So business continuity is generally managed by the organization's leadership. So this is the leadership is kind of around the business itself, how we obviously keep our business alive, and obviously how that business deals with the restoration of the key business processes. So it's basically the business as a whole. I'm going to put business as a whole, right? Because it looks at the entire overall picture of that business and how we restore it from key functioning business processes, right? So that's business continuity in sort of a nutshell. And then we've got DR, which is basically managed by the IT. So this is IT operations, this is IT systems, and obviously IT and IT services. So it's kind of IT driven, where business continuity is more business disaster recovery, and obviously how do we restore the business from obviously key critical events, something like a natural disaster and things like that. And we'll talk about a bit about both of them in upcoming videos. But now, obviously, the two differences here are DI is predominantly focused around IT services and our IT infrastructure, where business continuity is focused more around the business itself and kind of driven by or managed by the organizational leadership team within that business. So they're the two primary differences between the two. Now, how are these sort of interlinked? Now, both start with one theme. They both start with, and I'll just get a blue pen because they are both linked by something called a BIA, and this is a business impact assessment or business impact analysis, essentially. And this basically, during our BIA, we go through and we basically identify a couple of things. We ID critical functions, and these are things that obviously critical functions across the businesses, and then we have within the business itself, and processes within the organization, basically leading out obviously to the different types of business continuity. So we have to ensure that there's resilience of our critical functions and those processes behind them, but obviously from a DR perspective as well. So they kind of interlink when we talk about doing a BIA assessment or business impact analysis. And then from there, we basically need to identify, well, what type of IT systems are used to then support us through those functions. So the first part is obviously defining our critical functions. So what exists within the business? Are these, sales platforms? Is this a manufacturing page? Or manufacturing, you know, um, sales sort of quota thing that they have to manage, because now if they have to manufacture a bunch of steel when an order comes through, and then they have to obviously do whatever they have to go do, if this critical function goes down and they can't receive those orders, well then obviously that's a business criticality, right? So they've got to go away and define what they are, and then once they've found what the critical functions are, they're going to have to do what IT systems are then supporting that function, and then how do we obviously protect against downtime from there. So they're kind of interlinked, right? So then we'll go away and plan, obviously ensure that there's resilience in those IT systems that can back up the critical functions as we need. So then obviously we'll go away and obviously determine that. And then in the next couple of videos, we'll look at the sort of the BR, the DR, and the BCP sort of process itself. How do we look at creating a plan? We'll look at DR planning. So we're going to go into this a little bit more detail than what we're looking at it right now, but just sort of understand that there's a BIA that sort of interlinks both the business continuity and disaster recovery. So what are some of these outcomes and what are they similar to? Well, firstly, they're obviously similar in a couple of ways. One, we want to reduce downtime. So we want to reduce those interruptions caused by some sort of event, right? And that's done by planning. We create a plan on what we're going to do if an event happens, and we have a strategy in place on knowing what to do, right? So obviously reduce downtime and what to do. And we'll talk about this in the planning processes. We'll go into it in a lot more detail. Number two, right? So number two here, even though obviously an event has occurred, or maybe has never occurred, we've got to have that resilience as well. So even though nothing has occurred, so I'm just going to put a question mark for nothing, um, we're still going to have obviously a strategy in place, and that increases our resilience as well, because now that we have a plan, we've got the resource that can support us, and that supports our business or our business's confidence essentially to support the business in case of an outage or an event does occur. So we do all this planning and the assurances to ensure obviously we have the redundancies in place and that we're able to deal with the events that should happen or maybe are likely to happen. And we have to plan for these things and obviously do some tabletop exercises and define what they are. And this is the outcome essentially of our business continuity and disaster recovery outcomes. I hope you've enjoyed this sort of little overview video around BCP and DR. If there's any other questions that you have around sort of the overview component, if you'd like to know more around the BIA, we are going to go into this a little bit more details. But if there's anything else that you'd like to see, let me know, and I'll see you in an upcoming video. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.